A weary businessman sat alone at a corner table, staring at his untouched coffee as rain streaked the windows of the small downtown café. It was his 47th birthday, and not a single person had remembered. What the kind barista did next, and the mysterious gift he left behind, would transform her life in ways she never imagined. But it was the nanny's unexpected reaction that changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn rain drummed against the windows of Brew and Beyond, a modest coffee shop tucked between a vintage bookstore and a flower shop on Maple Street. The late afternoon light filtered through the glass, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors and mismatched furniture that gave the place its charm. Steam rose from the espresso machine as Sarah Martinez wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that day. At 26, Sarah had been working at the cafe for 3 years, ever since she'd moved to the city with dreams of becoming a teacher. Those dreams felt distant now, buried under student loan payments and the reality of barely making ends meet. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her apron bore the stains of a long shift. Despite her fatigue, she maintained the warm smile that had become her trademark among the regular customers. The afternoon rush had died down, leaving only a handful of patrons scattered throughout the cafe. College students hunched over laptops, an elderly woman reading a paperback novel, and in the far corner, a man who had been sitting alone for over an hour. Sarah had noticed him the moment he walked in. There was something about his posture that spoke of defeat, his shoulders curved inward as if carrying an invisible weight. He wore an expensive charcoal suit that had seen better days, the fabric slightly wrinkled and the tie loosened around his neck. His salt and pepper hair was disheveled, and deep lines etched his face, speaking of stress and sleepless nights. The coffee she had served him sat untouched, growing cold as he stared out the rain-soaked window with vacant eyes. Sarah had always been perceptive about people's emotions. It came naturally to her, this ability to read the subtle signs of distress. She watched him check his phone repeatedly, each glance followed by a deeper slump of his shoulders. Something about his stillness, his isolation in the bustling cafe, tugged at her heart. As the clock neared 5, Sarah made a decision. She prepared a fresh cup of coffee, their signature blend with just a touch of vanilla, and approached his table. The man looked up as she set the steaming mug beside his cold one, his eyes reflecting a mixture of surprise and wariness. "Sir, your coffee's on the house today," Sarah said softly, her voice carrying the gentle warmth that had comforted countless customers. "You look like you could use a fresh start." The man blinked, seeming to struggle with her simple act of kindness. "That's very kind, but I can pay," he said, his voice hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in hours. Sarah smiled, noting the tremor in his hands as he reached for his wallet. "I'm sure you can, but today it's my treat. Sometimes we all need someone to remind us that we matter." For a moment, the man's composure cracked, and Sarah caught a glimpse of raw vulnerability before he composed himself. "Thank you," he whispered, his eyes returning to the window. "It's been a difficult day." "Would you like to talk about it?" Sarah asked, pulling out the chair across from him. "I'm a good listener, and we're not too busy right now." The man studied her face, perhaps searching for signs of pity or judgment. Finding neither, he took a tentative sip of the fresh coffee. "It's my birthday today," he said finally. 47 years old, and I'm sitting alone in a coffee shop because I have nowhere else to go." Sarah's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "I'm sorry. That sounds really lonely. My wife left me 6 months ago," he continued, the words seeming to spill out of him. "Took our daughter and moved across the country. Said I worked too much, cared more about my business than my family. She wasn't wrong." He laughed bitterly. "I built a company from nothing, thought I was providing for them, but I lost them in the process." Sarah listened without interrupting, offering the gift of presence that so few people took the time to give. The man's name was David Chen, though he didn't share that detail yet. He had spent the day in his empty apartment, unable to bring himself to go to the office where his failing company demanded attention he no longer had the energy to give. "I used to have birthday parties," David continued, his voice growing softer. "My daughter would make me cards with crayon drawings. My wife would bake a chocolate cake and invite friends over. Now I can't even remember the last time someone said happy birthday to me." Sarah reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "Well, happy birthday, David," she said, having caught his name when he'd mumbled it while ordering. "I know it doesn't replace what you've lost, but you're not completely alone today." The simple gesture broke something open in David. Tears he had been holding back for months began to fall, and Sarah sat quietly with him as he grieved not just his birthday, but everything he had lost in his pursuit of success. She offered tissues and occasional words of comfort, but mostly she just remained present, allowing him the space to feel his pain without judgment. As the cafe prepared to close, David finally composed himself. "I should go," he said, reaching for his wallet. "Thank you for listening. You have no idea how much that meant." "It was my pleasure," Sarah replied honestly. "Everyone deserves to be heard, especially on their birthday." David stood, then paused, seeming to wrestle with a decision. Quietly, he pulled something from his wallet and slipped it under his coffee cup. "Thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists in the world," he said, then walked out into the rain before Sarah could respond. Sarah watched him disappear into the evening crowd, then lifted the coffee cup to clear the table. Underneath, she found a business card and what appeared to be several bills folded together. The business card read, "David Chen, CEO, Harmony Technologies," with a phone number and email address. Sarah's eyes widened as she unfolded the money. 5 $100 bills lay in her palm, more money than she made in a week. Her first instinct was to run after him, to explain that his kindness was payment enough and that she couldn't accept such a generous tip. But David had already vanished into the busy street, and something told her that this gift was as much for his healing as it was for her benefit. She carefully tucked the money and business card into her apron pocket, her mind reeling from the unexpected encounter. The walk home to her small apartment took Sarah through the quieter residential streets where she worked her second job. For the past years, she had been nannying for the Henderson family, caring for their 8-year-old daughter Emma 3 evenings a week. The extra income was essential, but more than that, Sarah genuinely loved spending time with the bright, curious child who reminded her why she had wanted to become a teacher in the first place. The Henderson house was a modest 2-story home with a well-tended garden and a red front door that Emma had convinced her parents to paint. Sarah used her key to enter, calling out her arrival as she always did. Emma bounded down the stairs, her dark curls bouncing as she threw her arms around Sarah in greeting. "Sarah, I've been waiting for you," Emma exclaimed. "Mom and Dad are getting ready for their dinner, and I have so much to tell you about school today." Margaret Henderson appeared at the top of the stairs, elegant in a navy dress and pearl earrings. She was a successful attorney who worked long hours but always made time for Emma when she was home. "Sarah, thank goodness you're here. We should be back by 10, and Emma's already had dinner. Her homework is on the kitchen table." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. "Problem, Mrs. Henderson. Have a wonderful evening," Sarah replied, helping Emma hang up her school backpack. As the Hendersons left for their anniversary dinner, Sarah settled into the familiar routine of homework assistance and evening activities. Emma was working on a creative writing assignment about heroes, and she peppered Sarah with questions about what made someone heroic. "My teacher says heroes don't have to wear capes," Emma said, chewing thoughtfully on her pencil eraser. "She says regular people can be heroes too. Do you think that's true?" Sarah smiled, thinking of David's grateful expression when she had simply offered him a listening ear. "I think your teacher is very wise. Sometimes the most heroic thing someone can do is show kindness to a stranger, or listen when someone needs to talk. Like how you always listen to me, even when I talk too much about my hamster," Emma asked with a grin. "Exactly like that," Sarah laughed. "Though I happen to love hearing about Mr. Whiskers and his adventures." As they worked together on Emma's homework, Sarah found herself thinking about the money in her pocket. $500 would change everything for her. She could pay her electric bill that was overdue, buy groceries without counting every penny, maybe even put a little aside for the teaching certification program she had been dreaming about but couldn't afford. Yet something felt strange about keeping such a large amount. David had been in emotional pain, possibly not thinking clearly about the size of the tip he was leaving. The ethical thing might be to return it, but how could she find him? The business card provided contact information, but would it be appropriate to reach out to a customer who had clearly been having a personal crisis? Emma noticed her distraction. "Sarah, you seem sad. Did something happen at work today?" Sarah considered how much to share with the observant child. "I met someone today who was having a really hard time. He was kind to me, but I'm not sure how to help him feel better." "Maybe you could be his friend," Emma suggested with the straightforward wisdom of childhood. "When I'm sad, having a friend makes everything better." "That's a lovely idea, sweetie. Sometimes adults make friendship more complicated than it needs to be." They finished Emma's homework and settled onto the couch to read together before bedtime. Emma had chosen a book about a young girl who discovers her grandmother was a secret agent during World War II. As they read about courage and sacrifice, Sarah found herself thinking about different kinds of bravery. Was it brave to accept help when you needed it? Was it brave to reach out to someone who was suffering? When the Hendersons returned home, Sarah gathered her things and prepared to leave. Margaret Henderson walked her to the door, as was her custom, asking about Emma's evening and confirming the schedule for the following week. "Sarah, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you seem different tonight," Margaret observed. "Not bad different, just thoughtful. Is everything all right?" Sarah hesitated, then decided to share a simplified version of her dilemma. "I had an interaction with a customer today that left me thinking about kindness and how we help each other. Someone did something very generous for me, and I'm not sure how to handle it appropriately." Margaret studied her with the sharp eyes of someone accustomed to reading people. "In my experience, when someone extends kindness, the best response is usually gracious acceptance and looking for ways to pay it forward. Guilt over receiving help serves no one." "That's wise advice. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson." "Of course. And, Sarah, I hope you know how grateful we are for everything you do for Emma. You have a gift with children." As Sarah walked home through the quiet streets, Margaret's words echoed in her mind alongside Emma's simple suggestion about friendship. Perhaps the answer wasn't whether to keep or return David's generous tip, but how to honor the human connection they had shared. The money could be life-changing for her, but maybe her response to his gift could be life-changing for him too. Back in her small studio apartment, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with David's business card in front of her. A quick internet search revealed that Harmony Technologies was indeed a real company, specializing in educational software development. Recent news articles painted a picture of a struggling business facing financial difficulties and increased competition from larger corporations. The photo accompanying one article showed a younger version of David, confident and smiling at a company event. The contrast with the broken man she had met that afternoon was stark. Whatever had happened to his personal life had clearly affected his professional world as well. Sarah drafted and deleted several emails, unsure of the right tone or approach. Finally, she settled on something simple and sincere. "Mr. Chen, I wanted to thank you again for your kindness today. Your generosity was overwhelming, and I hope I was able to provide some comfort during a difficult time. If you ever need someone to listen again, please don't hesitate to reach out. Wishing you brighter days ahead." She included her phone number and hit send before she could second-guess herself further. Whether David responded or not, she felt better for reaching out. Sometimes the bravest thing was simply extending a hand to someone who was drowning. The next morning brought an unexpected reply. David's email was brief but warm. "Sarah, your kindness yesterday meant more than you could know. I would be honored to take you up on your offer of friendship. Would you be interested in meeting for coffee again? I promise to be better company when I'm not having an emotional breakdown." Sarah smiled at his attempt at humor and quickly responded with her schedule. They arranged to meet the following afternoon at Brew & Beyond, this time as friends rather than customer and server. When David arrived the next day, he looked like a different person. He had shaved, his clothes were pressed, and though the sadness still lingered in his eyes, there was a spark there that had been absent before. He ordered coffee for both of them and insisted on paying, despite Sarah's protests. "I owe you more than coffee," he said, as they settled at the same corner table where they had first really talked. "Yesterday was the lowest point I've hit since my divorce. I was seriously considering whether anyone would miss me if I just disappeared. Your kindness reminded me that there are still good people in the world worth staying around for." Sarah felt a chill at his words, realizing how close he had been to making a devastating decision. "I'm so glad you decided to stay. The world needs more people who care about others, even when they're struggling themselves." David smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him. "Tell me about yourself, Sarah. I did all the talking yesterday, but I'd like to know about the person who saved my life with a cup of coffee and a listening ear." Over the next hour, Sarah shared her story, her dreams of teaching, her financial struggles, her love for working with children despite the challenges of making ends meet. David listened with the same attention she had given him, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouragement. "You mentioned you nanny for a family," David said. "Do you enjoy that work?" "I love it," Sarah replied, her face lighting up. "Emma is this amazing little girl who sees wonder in everything. She's smart and curious and kind. Spending time with her reminds me why I wanted to become a teacher in the first place." "What's holding you back from pursuing teaching?" David asked gently. Sarah sighed, stirring her coffee absently. "Money, mainly. I need to complete a certification program, and I can't afford to cut my working hours to attend classes. It feels like this impossible cycle where I need the job to survive, but the job prevents me from pursuing the career I actually want." David nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that trap. I spent so many years focused on building my business that I forgot why I started it in the first place. Originally, Harmony Technologies was supposed to develop educational software to help kids learn. I wanted to make a difference in education, but I got so caught up in profits and growth that I lost sight of the mission." "What kind of educational software?" Sarah asked, intrigued. "Interactive programs that adapt to different learning styles, games that make difficult concepts engaging, tools to help teachers connect with students who might otherwise fall through the cracks." David's voice grew more animated as he spoke. "We had some really innovative ideas, but when funding got tight, we started chasing more profitable contracts instead of following our vision." Sarah leaned forward, excited by the possibilities he was describing. "That sounds incredible. Do you think you'll ever go back to that original mission?" "Maybe," David said slowly. "I've been thinking a lot about what matters since yesterday. Success means nothing if you don't have people to share it with. And what's the point of building something if it doesn't make the world a little better?" They talked for another hour, discovering shared values and surprising connections. David had grown up in a working-class family and understood the struggle of pursuing dreams without resources. Sarah had briefly worked in corporate training and appreciated the challenges of building a business from nothing. When they finally parted ways, both felt a lightness that had been absent from their lives for too long. Sarah returned to work feeling energized, and her improved mood was noticed by her coworkers and customers alike. David went back to his office with a renewed sense of purpose, seeing his failing company not as a burden, but as an opportunity to rebuild something meaningful. Over the following weeks, their friendship deepened. They met regularly for coffee, sharing stories and offering each other support during difficult moments. David began opening up about his divorce and his regrets about prioritizing work over family. Sarah talked about her fears of never achieving her teaching dreams and her worry about disappointing the children she worked with. Emma Henderson noticed the change in Sarah immediately. The young girl was perceptive beyond her years and had always been sensitive to the moods of the adults around her. During one of their evening sessions, she looked up from her math homework with curious eyes. "Sarah, you seem happier lately. Like really happy, not just pretend happy. Did something good happen?" Sarah smiled at Emma's directness. "I made a new friend recently. Someone who understands what it's like to have big dreams and worry about whether they'll come true." "Is your friend nice?" Emma asked, always concerned about the people Sarah cared about. "Very nice. He's actually someone who cares a lot about education like I do. He wants to help kids learn and grow, just like you." Emma nodded approvingly. "I like friends who care about kids. Maybe someday I could meet him?" "Maybe someday." Sarah agreed, touched by Emma's automatic trust in her judgment. Margaret Henderson had also noticed Sarah's improved spirits. During one of their brief conversations at the end of an evening, she brought it up with characteristic directness. "Sarah, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you seem much more like yourself lately. Whatever was weighing on you seems to have lifted." "Thank you for noticing," Sarah replied. "I guess I've been reminded that it's okay to accept help from people and that good things can come from unexpected places." Margaret nodded thoughtfully. "That's a valuable lesson. Sometimes we get so used to struggling alone that we forget how much lighter life can be when we let others care about us." That evening, as Sarah helped Emma with a science project about friendship in the animal kingdom, the little girl made an observation that stopped Sarah in her tracks. "Did you know that some animals can only survive when they help each other?" Emma said, carefully gluing a picture of cleaner fish next to a photo of a sea turtle. "Like these fish clean the turtle's shell and the turtle gives them food. My teacher says it's called mutual something. Mutualism." Sarah supplied, struck by the parallel to her own situation. "Yeah, that! They both get what they need by being friends. It's like they're stronger together than apart." Sarah stared at the project, a sudden realization dawning. Her friendship with David had become exactly that kind of mutual support. She had given him kindness when he needed it most, and in return he had given her hope and perspective on her own dreams. They were both stronger together than apart. That night, Sarah called David with an idea that had been percolating in her mind for days. "What if we combined our dreams?" she said without preamble when he answered. "You want to get back to educational software, and I want to help kids learn. What if there was a way to do both?" David was quiet for a moment, then said, "Tell me more. I've been thinking about Emma and the other kids I've worked with over the years. They all learn differently, but the traditional classroom doesn't always accommodate that. What if we could develop software that really adapted to individual learning styles? And what if we tested it with real kids, in real situations, so we knew it actually worked?" "That's exactly what I wanted to build originally," David said, excitement creeping into his voice. "But I never had access to the kind of hands-on educational experience you have. I was designing in a vacuum, guessing about what kids and teachers actually needed. And I've always had ideas about how to help kids learn better, but no way to implement them on a larger scale," Sarah added. "Maybe together we could create something that neither of us could build alone." They talked late into the night, brainstorming possibilities and sharing their deepest hopes for what education could become. By the time they hung up, the foundation of a partnership had been laid, built on mutual respect and shared vision. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. David began reaching out to former colleagues and investors, pitching a new direction for Harmony Technologies that focused on educational impact rather than just profit. Sarah researched certification programs and began documenting her observations about different learning styles and effective teaching techniques. Margaret Henderson proved to be an unexpected ally when Sarah nervously explained her new opportunity. As an attorney with experience in business partnerships, Margaret offered to review any contracts and provided valuable advice about protecting Sarah's interests while pursuing her dreams. "I'm proud of you for taking this leap," Margaret told her. "Emma has learned so much from you, and it's wonderful to see you pursuing a way to share that gift with more children." Emma's reaction was even more enthusiastic. When Sarah explained that she might be helping to create computer programs that would make learning more fun and effective for kids everywhere, Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. "Will you make games that help kids who have trouble reading, like my friend Marcus?" Emma asked. "He's really smart, but reading is hard for him, and sometimes the teachers don't understand." "That's exactly the kind of thing we want to work on," Sarah assured her. "Making sure every kid has a chance to show how smart they are, even if they learn differently." Emma hugged Sarah tightly. "You're going to help so many kids. This is the best idea ever." The validation from Emma meant more to Sarah than any business plan or financial projection could. This was why she had wanted to become a teacher in the first place, to make a real difference in children's lives. When Sarah and David officially launched their partnership, they decided to start small and personal. They would develop a prototype with input from Emma and a few other children Sarah knew, testing their ideas in real-world situations before seeking larger investments or contracts. David had used part of his remaining resources to set up a small office space that doubled as a testing lab. The walls were painted in bright, cheerful colors, and the furniture was adjustable to accommodate children of different ages. It looked more like a playroom than a traditional office, which was exactly what they wanted. Emma was their first official tester, and she approached the role with the seriousness of a seasoned professional. She tested early versions of their adaptive reading software, providing feedback that was both insightful and brutally honest. "This part is fun, but this part is boring," she would say, pointing at different sections of the program. "And this voice sounds like a robot. Can you make it sound more like a real person?" Her suggestions led to improvements that made their software more engaging and effective. Other children soon joined the testing program, each bringing their own perspectives and needs. Sarah worked directly with the kids while David refined the technical aspects of the programs, creating a development process that was truly centered on the users' experiences. The breakthrough came 6 months after their partnership began. They had developed a reading comprehension program that adapted not just to academic level, but to individual interests and learning preferences. A child who struggled with traditional texts might excel when the same story was presented as an interactive adventure or a series of visual clues. Emma had been working with a particularly challenging passage about marine biology when suddenly everything clicked. She looked up at Sarah with wide eyes and said, "I get it now. The way you explained it with the pictures and the games made it make sense." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as she watched Emma's confidence bloom. This was the moment she had been working toward for years, the instant when a child's face lit up with the joy of understanding. David, watching from across the room, felt a similar emotion. For the first time since his divorce, he was building something that truly mattered. The success wasn't measured in profits or market share, but in the spark of comprehension in a child's eyes. Word of their innovative approach began to spread through educational circles. Teachers who had heard about their work reached out, eager to test the software with their own students. Parents of children with learning differences sought them out, hoping for tools that would help their kids succeed. Margaret Henderson became one of their strongest advocates, recommending their services to other families and helping to connect them with educators who could benefit from their approach. Her legal expertise also proved invaluable as they navigated contracts and partnerships with schools and learning centers. One evening, as Sarah was packing up after a successful testing session with a group of elementary students, she found Emma sitting quietly in the corner, looking thoughtful. "What's on your mind, sweetie?" Sarah asked, settling into the chair next to her. "I was just thinking about that first day when you seemed sad, and you said you met someone who needed a friend," Emma said. "Was that Mr. David?" Sarah smiled, impressed by Emma's perceptive memory. "Yes, that was David. Why do you ask?" "Because look what happened when you were kind to him," Emma said, gesturing around the bright, busy office space. "You helped him feel better, and then he helped you with your dream, and now you're both helping lots of kids. It's like the best chain reaction ever." Sarah felt her heart swell with pride and love for this wise little girl. "You're absolutely right. Sometimes when we help someone else, we end up helping ourselves too. And sometimes the kindest thing we can do is accept help when someone offers it." Emma nodded seriously. "My mom says that's what community means, people taking care of each other." "Your mom is very smart," Sarah agreed. "And so are you." As they prepared to leave that evening, David joined them, looking tired but happy after a long day of coding and testing. Emma, who had overcome her initial shyness around him, now treated him like an honorary uncle. "Mr. David, will you come to my school's science fair next week?" she asked. "I'm doing a project about how technology helps people learn, and I want to show everyone what you and Sarah made." David looked touched by the invitation. "I would be honored to come, Emma. Thank you for asking." As they walked to their cars together, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. A moment of simple kindness in a coffee shop had grown into a friendship, then a partnership, and now a mission that was touching the lives of children and families throughout their community. David seemed to be having similar thoughts. "You know, yesterday was exactly 1 year since we met," he said. "I've been thinking about that day a lot." "It was a pretty important day for both of us," Sarah agreed. "I was ready to give up on everything," David admitted. "My marriage was over. My business was failing. And I felt like I had nothing left to offer the world. You saved my life that day, not just with the coffee, but by showing me that I still mattered to someone. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. You saved mine too, you know. Not just with the generous tip, though that helped more than you know. You reminded me that my dreams were worth pursuing and that I didn't have to pursue them alone. They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the sounds of the bustling city, but somehow in their own quiet bubble of gratitude and friendship. I have something for you, David said, reaching into his briefcase. He pulled out a framed photograph. The two of them with Emma and the other children who had helped test their software, all grinning at the camera in the bright office space they had created together. Below the photo was a small plaque that read, "Where kindness meets opportunity, dreams come true." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as she looked at the picture. It captured everything they had built together. Not just a business or a product, but a community of people who believed in the power of education and the importance of helping each other succeed. There's something else, David said, his voice growing more serious. I've been working with my attorney to formalize our partnership, and I want to make sure you have equal ownership in everything we've built. This company exists because of your vision and your connection with the kids. You should be a full partner, not just a consultant. Sarah stared at him, overwhelmed by his generosity and trust. David, I can't let you just give me half of your company. You're not taking anything, he said firmly. You're accepting what you've earned. Besides, this isn't really my company anymore. It's ours. And it's something better than anything I could have built alone. As they finalized the legal details over the following weeks, Sarah realized that her life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. She was now co-owner of a growing educational technology company, working directly with children every day, and pursuing her teaching certification through night classes that the company helped fund. More importantly, she had gained a true friend and business partner who shared her values and supported her dreams. David had also rebuilt his life, finding purpose and joy in work that made a real difference for children and families. The ripple effects of their partnership continued to spread. Margaret Henderson left her law firm to become their legal counsel and business manager, drawn by the mission and the opportunity to work for something she believed in. Emma became their youngest consultant, offering feedback on new programs and helping them understand how children really thought and learned. Other families began seeking them out, not just for their software, but for their approach to education that honored each child's unique strengths and challenges. Teachers started attending their workshops, eager to learn techniques that could help them reach every student in their classrooms. On the first anniversary of their meeting, Sarah and David returned to Brew and Beyond for coffee. The cafe looked the same, but they were completely different people than the ones who had first connected over a simple act of kindness. I've been thinking about what Emma said about chain reactions, Sarah said as they settled into their usual corner table. One small act of kindness really did change everything, didn't it? David nodded, looking around the familiar space. I used to think business was about competition and individual achievement, but what we've built together is so much stronger than anything I accomplished alone. The best part is that it's just the beginning, Sarah added. Every child we help, every teacher we support, every family we serve creates another opportunity for kindness and connection. As they talked and laughed together, other customers in the cafe couldn't help but notice their obvious friendship and shared joy. A young barista, new to the job and worried about making ends meet while pursuing her art degree, watched them with curiosity. Sarah caught the young woman's wistful expression and remembered herself a year ago, struggling to balance dreams with reality. She walked over to the counter and left a generous tip along with her business card. If you're ever interested in how technology can support education and the arts, we'd love to talk with you, Sarah said with a warm smile. Sometimes the most unexpected conversations lead to amazing opportunities. The barista, whose name was Maria, looked down at the card with wide eyes. Thank you, she said softly. I've been wondering if there was a way to combine my love of art with helping kids learn. There absolutely is, Sarah assured her. And if you're willing to be open to new possibilities, I'd love to introduce you to some people who might change your perspective on what's possible. As Sarah and David left the cafe that evening, they walked past a small plaque on the wall they had never noticed before. It read, Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Below it, in smaller text, someone had added, "And it's contagious." David chuckled as he read it. "I think we've become carriers of a very positive contagion." "The best kind," Sarah agreed. "One that spreads hope and possibility everywhere it goes." 6 months later, Maria had joined their team as a visual designer, creating engaging graphics and interactive elements that made learning come alive for children with artistic learning styles. Her story became another link in the chain of kindness and opportunity that had started with a cup of coffee and a listening ear. Emma Henderson, now 9 years old and more thoughtful than ever, often reminded the adults around her that the best stories were the ones where everyone ended up better than when they started. As she watched Sarah, David, and their growing team work together to help children around the world discover their own potential, she knew she was witnessing exactly that kind of story. The company continued to grow, but never lost sight of its core mission: to honor the unique way each child learns and to create opportunities for connection and understanding. Every program they developed, every partnership they formed, and every success they celebrated was built on the foundation of that first simple act of kindness between two strangers in a coffee shop. Years later, when people asked Sarah and David about the secret to their success, they always gave the same answer. They had learned that the most powerful business strategy was simply caring about people and being willing to help when help was needed. Everything else was just details. Their story became a reminder that in a world that often feels divided and disconnected, the simplest acts of human kindness can still create extraordinary transformations. A cup of coffee, a listening ear, and the courage to reach out to someone in need had created ripples that continued to spread, touching lives in ways that could never be fully measured or counted. And in a small cafe on Maple Street, new connections were still being made every day, as baristas offered fresh starts to weary customers, and strangers became friends over shared stories and steaming mugs of hope. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.